In this planetary feminine awakening, many Western women have been living with the social rights and access to independence where they have developed different standards to live by. And as a result, relationships are going through big adjustments to accommodate various contrasts in self-awareness and income and relational education, especially. There seems to be a lot of difficult but necessary corrections going on inside of people and in their relationships as society finds its way out of unsustainable patriarchal paradigms. And as those corrections unfold, there are some genuinely challenging and sometimes quite extreme scenarios that people are dealing with around finances in romantic relating. And how this ends up looking in people's relationships can include things not seen so much before in modern culture. Like how in Australia, I've heard of a pretty recent epidemic, apparently, in some areas with women 60 plus, many of them 60 plus, homeless and living out of their cars, including women who were quite well off and who trusted their husbands to take care of them, even in case of divorce, but their well-being was not considered. And men who are responsible with making money for their family, but who don't see growing on an emotional or an intimate level as a priority, and so dealing with the fallout that comes their way. And there are women getting wiser too, but also still working themselves into the ground as mothers and wives, going 50-50 in the money and work outside of the home, while also being full-time carers. And everyone loses in that situation because the family doesn't thrive when women are so stressed from over-functioning. And the other extreme of younger generation getting demanding about what they expect and feel entitled to financially, which only some guys can meet. So, as difficult as the money theme can be for people, and there are obviously so many other scenarios that I didn't name as well, I see how it's a necessary wrestle to find out how important it is for men's development to know what else they have to offer as masculine provision, because it's not just money alone that you guys are valued for by women. But money is a big conversation in relationship. It's such a common factor in why couples' marriages struggle or break up. And today's guest has a focus on showing women how to generate their own financial abundance from their integrated feminine energy rather than from an over masculinized or disembodied place, which is an evolutionary step for women. And it can happen in harmony in partnership with men. In this conversation, we touched on some of the current themes we're seeing playing out at the moment. And I'm welcoming perspectives and the voices of men to be part of this in other episodes too. And for now, feel free to let me know what resonates from this conversation with Katie Moriarty. Welcome, everyone, to this provocative and heartfelt podcast, Beyond Patriarchal Sex, a place for both women and men to elevate ourselves, finding out what it takes to live beyond our conditioning and assumptions, not only for ourselves, but also for the coming generations. My name is Devashi Shakti, and you are warmly welcome to be part of these conversations. All right. Well, I am very pleased that my friend Katie is willing to come and share today. And Katie Moriarty is a feminine energetics and embodiment mentor. We actually met in a business mastermind years ago in Australia. And yes. And so much has happened since then.
A lot.
A lot. And I like to start off these co-creation conversations here on this podcast with asking you, what is your interpretation of what patriarchal sex is?
Yeah, I saw like you did a post about this a little while ago. I wrote one word on that post. I don't know if you remember, but I wrote porn.
I remember.
Yeah, I was like, I feel like that's enough said. Like for me, it was just like that's the first thing that came to mind because I feel like within that there's many, many, many things woven, under that banner.
Yes. Porn, the enactment of porn, and all the many things around that. Yeah.
Yeah, and the expectation that it's given both women and men of what sex actually is. I think it's like, yeah, that's a huge piece.
Yes. And because this platform, I mean, it's called a patriarchal sex because it does come down to what is actually embodied in people. Like, what do we really believe? How do we really feel? How do we really see ourselves and each other at the end of the day? That's going to come
Mhm.
through our bodies. And with your awareness of embodiment and how important that is, I know that you really get that. And
Yeah,
I also know that your work really connects in with financial empowerment for women.
it
So
does.
in
Yeah.
terms of yeah, so in terms of how patriarchy is present in intimacy and relationships, um, where we're going to be maybe a little more on the periphery of sexual intimacy, but it still will be relevant, and I'm sure it will come up.
Totally. For sure, it definitely ties in.
Yeah, yeah, it really, really does. Um, there's actually quite a few current social conversations around that exactly, which are maybe it's a bit of a hot topic in a way. And so it's great that we're meeting now while a lot of that is alive in the collective field.
Mm.
Yes. And can I also start by asking how you feel about coming and meeting to have this conversation today?
Yeah, so thank you for asking. It's been such an interesting journey for me since I said yes to have this conversation because parallel in my personal life, I've been moving through some things that have been bringing up for me a lot of memories around my relationship to men, the masculine, my journey in dating throughout my life. And once I said yes to having this conversation, it was like a lot of it had me reflecting on naturally my experience with sex, with men, with dating, with, all of my experiences with my own sexuality, my own body, throughout my life. And it was actually really confronting and it brought up nerves. Like I felt nervous to come here. It can be a very tender, confronting place to go within ourselves, I think. And it's definitely felt like that for me.
Yes, yes. Yes, and thank you for voicing that because it is very personal. It's a very, very personal subject. And yeah, it's a challenging one. It's not an easy one to go into. And yet the necessity for it is so real. Katie, so let's jump towards the financial autonomy. And I want to ask you, and it'll all come out in the mix all together. But why is financial autonomy, in your experience, so important for women to have that empowerment in general, but in their relationship as well? And this is
Yeah.
where patriarchal intimacy in relationship comes into the mix.
Yeah, because I think like I've been on such an interesting journey in my own understanding of this, and like there's so many layers and layers and layers I've uncovered. Because for me, I've always been a financially independent woman because finances throughout my childhood and teen years were kind of used as leverage for me to conform to things that I didn't really want to conform to. So I think like coming out of that family dynamic into the workforce. I was like, I never, ever, ever want to feel controlled around money again. And the thing is, that served me super well because I've actually had an incredible life. I've done everything I wanted to do and I'm still going. Like, had all these amazing experiences, so much freedom, like, done so many things that other people kind of reflect to me now, friends and family. Like, you've had this incredible life. And I gave that to myself, and that's something I'm really, really proud of. Um, Now, in saying this, I've had my own journey with all of this where it's like, there's so much talk about, like, there's so much shaming of women for being successful. There's so much shaming of women for being financially independent, almost like you're this boss babe, as they like to say, quote unquote, that's like, I don't need no man is one of the things that's thrown around. And like, I get this. I do, because I see the light and shadow, and I see the shades and everything, like the spectrum, the full spectrum of this. I do feel like if we're coming from this place of like hyper independence where we keep people away and we have our hearts closed and all that kind of thing, then sure, like there's if that's not really serving us in our truest desires, that's something for us to look at internally. And like listening to a lot of, I guess, masculine, well-known masculine mentors over the years has made me question, like, am I just emotionally unavailable or something? Like, is there something wrong with me being a woman who's like financially autonomous and can provide for herself? But to me, it's meant that I've had this amazing life experience. I've had freedom of choice. And it's also meant that the very unhealthy relationships I found myself in the past, no need for me to stay in. I've had the freedom to be able to walk away when necessary. And in many occasions, it's been very necessary for my well-being for me to leave those relationships. And so the way that I look at it, like with the journey I've been on, and I look at it now through the lens I'm looking at it through now with the women I've worked with my own journey, it's like there are so many women, I believe, that are trapped in relationships that are unhealthy or abusive, harmful, and unsupportive on so many levels because they don't have the financial independence to leave.
Yes, yes, I 100% agree with you. And it's been my experience also. But if we were to say, Katie, like if just say in those relationships you've had, what would be the dynamics that you would have gotten stuck in inside that intimacy and relationship and sex and whatever else if you didn't have the financial autonomy at the time to make a different choice?
Yeah, so narcissistic, like genuinely narcissistically abusive relationships where like there's power dynamics, control, mental, verbal, emotional abuse, um, where yeah, like I would say that that's a big part of it. Like I have, unfortunately, due to my upbringing and the things that I've been working through on my healing journey, not necessarily attracted the best men in the past. And a lot of the times, those relationships were actually psychologically very abusive, and I didn't realize until I realized. And so, had I have not had the financial circumstances to be able to leave, like I got married in 2015 to someone that I believe is an undiagnosed narcissist at the very best, like potentially something more sinister than that. And like by the grace of Goddess, I had not only the courage and the strength to leave that when I figured it out because I realized what was happening, but I had the financial resources and the means and the skill set to be able to do so. And so I did, and I made a choice like very quickly once I realized what was playing out in that dynamic. This is over now and I'm walking away. And like I say, if I didn't have the financial resources I had at the time, I probably would have felt very trapped in that dynamic.
Yeah. And you were married, you said.
Yeah, I got married very quickly after a short time of knowing this man who like was an excellent love bomber. And at the time I was absolutely ripe for love bombing because it felt like the dream come true. Like someone finally saw me, someone really like saw me for who I was. Like one of the first things he said was like, "You have such a beautiful heart," and that was just like music to my ears. I was like, I do have a beautiful heart. Like this man sees me. So it's like I naively in this maiden energy went into that and I bought all of it. And it felt like the dream come true until I actually realized I was in this like living nightmare. But because of the resources I had, I not only ended that, I moved into state, which felt like a very necessary move at that point in time because I wasn't sure about my safety on every level. And I needed to get away from that altogether. And again, like all of that was only possible because I had the skill set to be able to transfer the work that I did into state. I also had the financial ability to do so and I could support myself. And I'm so, so grateful that that's the way that that went, because I believe for a lot of women, that's not how it goes. And money is leveraged to control women often. And I know that because I see it a lot in social situations, but also in the work that I do.
Yeah, yeah. And so you got married, but you didn't have children, right? And you probably have heard or you know from people, women you know directly, that it's statistically the case that once children have come into the picture, someone of that character of the man that you described can actually escalate and get much, much worse. And it potentially could have become physical abuse, right?
I'm so lucky. Like I look at that time and I just feel like I was divinely protected because I wanted to have a child. And that's one of the conversations we had. I still do, by the way, want to be a mother. And this is like 10 years later and that still hasn't happened yet. But the relationships I've been in have been the most fertile training ground for me to know myself. Like it's been the most incredible um journey like of self-exploration. But when I look back on that, I am like, thank goodness that did not happen because that would have entrapped me in a situation that I just don't know how I would have gotten out of that. And it was after that actually that I became very clear and discerning around like I do not want to have a child with a man until I'm very clear that there's someone that's going to be emotionally and in all the ways supportive of and healthy for me to commit to a lifelong creation with, which is probably why I'm still here doing my thing, because as of like now, that hasn't been the case.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm so happy for you that you were
Thank you.
protected, that you made that decision because, when we look around in the social wider situation, even if we're looking just within Australia, I mean, there are a lot of dangerous situations that women can potentially be in when they don't have that foundation of financial autonomy. Yeah. And
For
so the
sure.
enabling of, yeah, on a personal level and on a social level, this enabling of that entitlement and this ownership and all of the other themes that are involved in a patriarchal mindset. Um, and I want to take a moment here to remind everyone, which I've said in the entire way from the setup of this podcast and this project, that patriarchy is not a reference to men, it's a paradigm and it lives in men, women, and whoever differently. So women who enable it are, run by it themselves because they can't get away from it,
Hmm.
or they see it, play into it. I'm thinking of the trad wife trend at the moment, which is like the polar opposite reality to what you and I are both wired for. um, but
Yeah.
it seems like a pretty ridiculous scenario, right? Like, I mean, I'm all for a woman being 100% present as a mother and as a partner, as a wife, if that's what she wants to do. Like, that's absolutely beautiful to me. I actually have even recommended a lot of the women that I've worked with to thoroughly enjoy and embrace that time while they have it.
Hmm.
Um, and they have to do a lot of inner work to find to source their value, not through validation from what they're achieving in the world. And it ends up being a massive healing process for them. But that's remarkably different to taking on the caricature of the 1950s housewife and trying to emulate that. Like, it's so delusional to me that someone would do that.
I want to say, like, I have, gone through so many different thought forms on my own journey with this because there was a time where I actually believed if I want to be with a strong, healthy, masculine man, I'm going to have to, like, potentially stop doing what I'm doing. And my greatest desire was actually love and motherhood over success. So it was like, okay, so I started to, like, in my mind think, well, I'm not going to be able to do this anymore. So I'm going to have to let this work go because I, like, there's so many masculine mentors, as we said that I have followed that it's sort of like I feel like there's this underlying shaming. It's like, I wouldn't want to be with a woman who's got her own thing going on because I just want her to, And I think the thing that is irresponsible in all of this that people need to look at is if we lived in a society of men that were really healed and empowered and integrated in their hearts and emotionally intelligent and aware and had done their work as like the majority, sure, there would be so much more space for women to be able to make that choice to give up their autonomy because they're going to be genuinely supported and taken care of. Or if we lived in community where it's like, they build a life around the women that are the mothers or the healers or whatever. But that's not the case. Like we literally live in a society that is full of people navigating complex trauma, many of which who haven't actually done the required work to be able to be a healthy, integrated man in self-leadership that can take care of a woman like that. That's just facts. And I'm always one to say, as women, we're like, I'm big on self-responsibility. I'm like, I know women have a lot of healing work to do too. It's not like it's a one-sided conversation, but you're asking one side of the equation to give up their power and their freedom and their independence and hand it over to someone that probably doesn't have the capacity to take care of them. And that's actually, I hadn't really thought about it until this week, which, this conversation, impending conversation sparked my deeper thoughts around this. And I was like, that's actually quite terrifying. Like, why would we encourage women to do that at this stage of this journey that everybody's on? It just doesn't really make sense.
100%. 100%. And in my sense, the type of man that is anti-feminism is the most dangerous situation to be in to relinquish that financial autonomy. Because the way I see it, Katie, is that feminism exists because when men had the majority, or actually all, not even the majority is still happening now. When they had all of the power and choices and leadership in the world without any female input whatsoever, because women had no rights, guess what? They didn't take care of us. Hence, feminism exists, guys, right? Like it literally wouldn't exist if there were no need for it, right? So there's this romantic delusion that some are having that, we just should just blindly trust the male leadership, without question, when there's been a lot of history already so far proving that that's actually not at all true. If we go by the track record, that's just a terrible thing to fall back on. Um, Craziness, craziness.
Yeah. And like I live in an echo chamber in a way of men that are in the work. And I think that also played a part in sort of like skewing my view a little bit because it's like, well, all I see around me is like I was having this conversation with someone who's really not in this space, a man that's not in this space a few weeks ago. And he was talking to me about like how men don't want to be with women anymore. They literally, like, so many men have decided they don't want a relationship because it's just too effed up out there. And I'm like, what? I'm like, really? Because in my world, I just see men that like, talk really positively about women, or they're in the work, or men doing men's work, and very imperfect men doing the work. But like, kind of like we're all, I felt like working together on this common cause of like healing our stuff so we can actually be in healthy relationships. And it's like, that's not what it looks like in the rest of the world a lot of the time. So it's I think you can get, when you're in this space, a little into the echo chamber of like of thinking things are better than they are sometimes. Yeah.
Yes, yes, definitely. So, Katie, if we're to go into the scenario of when a woman doesn't have the choice, like you have had and that I have also had, to be able to create her own reality when, the standards that she wants to live by are not happening, not being offered. So, it would be healthy to be able to move on in those instances. When that is not an option, when that's not on the table, the unconscious enabling of what we don't really want to see more of as women, but have to maybe allow because of survival reasons. I mean, you have a lot of different people around you, I'm sure, but do you see that in the culture around you? Do you see that in society around you? And I mean that in the sense that not that you have conversations with every single woman that you see to know that, but when you are an embodied woman, we can feel things and we can sense things.
Mm.
You know, like we know what a woman looks like when she's radiant. We know what a woman feels like when she is safe and free to really be rested in her own body and in her full presence. So, in terms of, what you see going on in Australia, like at the supermarket or wherever you may be, not just in your direct circles that you interact with, right? Like, can you tell around you that maybe there are a lot more women um, than they might even think, possibly enduring something that they might not otherwise
For
if they
sure.
had
Like,
the financial autonomy.
for sure. Like, I think that is probably the number one reason. And I don't even have to have a direct connection with someone to know this. Like, the number one reason why probably women don't leave relationships they're unhappy in is because they don't have the skills, they don't have the work history, they don't have the money, and they might be a full-time mother or even a part-time mother. And it's like, so what happens if you leave your partner, husband, whoever, with your two or three kids, and then you've got to provide for them, make a living, somehow be a mom? Like, how is it, like, genuinely, how is it possible for 99% of people to make that choice?
If you are a woman who wants to live beyond patriarchal sex, you're going to love the Tigress Path. It's primal feminine spirituality with deep somatic teachings and female embodiment practice. Currently, we have classes online and in person. There's the annual Tigress Bali retreat and more. So reach out on social media or go to thetigresspath.com for details. Yeah.
It's so overwhelmingly problematic, I imagine. Like, as I say, I don't have kids, and it's like I can't imagine having to make the choice between trying to, like, I imagine for a lot of women, it looks like putting your happiness at the bottom of it's probably the least important thing in that scenario. The most important thing is probably making sure that your children are provided for and okay. And so what the myriad, like the spectrum of what women are probably stepping over, pushing to the side, choosing to ignore, putting up with, or just making work, I imagine is probably broad. But
Yes.
for me, yeah, I'm sure there's plenty of women that even if we're not talking about, abusive scenarios or whatever, it might be like, this is just, this is like with the wisdom I've got from 10 years ago or 5 years ago or whatever, this isn't what I would choose for myself. And I think, I guess I'm wired for that sense of freedom. And I feel for women feeling trapped in any kind of relationship because they just don't really have the option.
Yes, yes. And I'll pick up what you said before around, in some circles at least, there's shaming of women being successful and an assumption that she's too masculine or too in her masculine and blah, blah, blah. But what can get mixed in that with what you last said is how when that woman who's got herself, her sacred relationship with herself non-existent or coming last, because she has to be so in the martyr and the mother what a lot of, and talking about feminine energetics, that's what you focus on as well. That's actually a masculine
It is.
place
It
for a
is.
woman to be in. And it might
It,
not look like people saying boss bitch and blah, 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 but it's a very masculine giving out, putting out energy. Yeah.
I'm so glad that you brought this up because it's so true. And I have this theory on this that a lot of women get triggered by when I say it, but I'm like, you can't be in your feminine energy truly when you're in major survival, whatever that looks like, right? Because, like, to me, feminine is receptivity, it's lush, it's overflow, it's inspiration, it's creativity, it's flow. And so just because you're a mom or you're a wife doesn't mean you're in your feminine energy by any means, like more than a woman who's independent and supporting herself. Like I have a healthy masculine energy. That's why I can take care of myself and lead myself. And I love that about myself. But because of that, I'm able to be so in my feminine. Like I've created a life where I have so much spaciousness. I have so much flow, fun. I only do things that really light me up. I have, I'm very joyful because I have a beautiful life. And so it's like I constantly get the reflection from men specifically. They're like, you are so feminine. You're so in your feminine. It's like it's a breath of fresh air for them. And it's like, so the notion that I'm a less feminine woman because I can financially provide for myself, actually, it's the reason why I am so feminine because I want for nothing. And I trust spirit brings me the money that I need through the beautiful work that I do. And I take really good care of myself.
Yes, yes. And that's so beautiful. I'm so happy you're having that experience. And like for sure, there are some women that fit that mold of overworking and over efforting and over functioning. And so they become quite masculinized in the career driven and focused way. But that's not the only option. And that's not how a lot of us are living it, including you and I, right? And I've also had that reflection all my life. I mean, some women that I've known for a long time have said to me, "You are one of the most feminine women I've ever come across," and I just have so many examples of being stopped in the street and being asked, "Am I a ballet dancer or something?" And I'm like, "Ah, no." Like I have a very ethereal, in
Yes.
the outside, I look quite yin feminine, right? So, I mean, anyone that's looking at us talking about this, like, no, they're not really getting it, they're not really in their feminine. We actually genuinely very much are. And like
Yeah.
you, Kate, freedom has been a massive priority for me because of the things that I've been through and where I've come from. But I think it's just my nature as well. And I've actually been 100% financially autonomous, responsible for myself since I was 16, 17 years old, So um, having that resourcefulness inside of me, having this healthy inner masculine development inside of me, and like know that it's not always easy to attain that at first, like whatever age, I believe. But when we cultivate that inside, um, to me, this makes a much more whole experience of relationship.
I did a story about this the other day, but I was like, I find the men that are triggered by me, generally speaking, are men that have not yet done their healing work and integrated. And it's not just my money, it's like my expression, my full range, that my presence, my internally sourced power seems to trigger a particular type of man that I would say has not actually done the work to become an embodied man as yet, an integrated man. And so it's like the whole package is just like probably overwhelming. But I have met so many men that I feel genuinely really admire what I do and they love my passion for my work. And it's not like I'm out there grinding, hustling, like, I'm coming from this place of like complete overflow where to me, it's not just my work, it's like my soul's genius, my soul's gift, my soul's magic, like my heart. Like I love what I do. It's my calling from God, Goddess. Like that's what it is. It's the divine pulling of my heart. And there's nothing more amazing to me when I see a woman like really overcome these illusions and stories and old programming, like step into her fullness. And it's like, I will always want to do this work. It's part of who I am. So it's like, how could you not love, respect, support, encourage, and uplift that? Especially if you're
Yeah.
a man that is sure of who you are and where you fit. Like, I'm not competing with you. Like, I want to be with a very healthy masculine man that I'm like, I'm so proud. That's my man. He's amazing. I have a completely different skill set. I have a completely different energy. I have a completely different, like, I'm the oracle. I'm the gift that complements your grounded, healthy yang. There is no competition in that for me. It's like, I adore you. I think you're amazing. And I imagine that in return. you feel the same about me. And there's that
Yeah.
polarity there naturally.
Yeah. And I love this sort of definition that's being put around this type of man that we're talking about right now, that not only would he, you know, encourage you and just, love you being in your shining, he's so comfortable with you doing that because he's so comfortable with himself. And that is so attractive, right?
Totally. It
Yeah.
it's so attractive, and it's like I actually, that is my standard. Like I need a man like that. I could not be with a man that, and I made this choice like at some point in this journey, because I'm a very introspective person. I have what I would consider quite a high level of self-awareness. So everything I'm looking at, I'm like, when I'm making this choice of like, do I want to be a woman that gets fully taken care of by these provider men that seem to not like women that have their own thing going on? I had to make a stand for myself. And I was like, thank you for the reflection, all this outside noise. My choice, like anchored in my being that I feel so strongly in my body, in my heart, in my spirit, that is not a man for me. And that's okay. And I'm also like, if you want to live that way, go for it. I just realized like I made this choice. I want to be with a man who is successful in his own right because of who he is, but also really celebrates me for everything that I am. And this is part of who I am. So if it's not that, it's literally just not it for me. Like, that's it. There's no
Yeah, for
other
sure.
way.
For sure. And in defining the feminine or feminine energy in women specifically, um, I think there is a pretty superficial, disembodied understanding of polarity teachings around that going around currently, right? Like in this reclamation of traditional relationship roles, which I'm actually all for in a lot of ways, but not if it can't comprehend that a woman has quite a range, just like a man, a fully developed man has quite a range of all the way yin and yang in his. It's like the freedom to go there, to unlock it, to be able to go where we need to go. But the way I see it is that every individual person, like a fingerprint, has their most natural
That's it.
essence in expression, and we're not all the same. So to tell a woman that is naturally got some healthy feminine yang, if I call it that, um, and that's like part of her magic, part of her gift, that's part of what makes her her, to call her masculine and try to subdue that is just crazy town to me. Um, Yes, because just like a man, if he really wants to have inner freedom, the range to move and be authentic in all of his expressions, and at the same time, he will have his essence and his gift and his expression like a fingerprint that's unique to him. And we have to know who we are and not try to box each other in through these conceptual perceptions that are very limiting and kind of dangerous in a way that it's telling someone how they should be rather than allowing who they actually are to emerge. Like, isn't that what intimacy and love and union is all about?
Yes, yes. I so agree with this because like my definition of feminine embodiment for the women in my world, like of course it's about being anchored in our actual body and what I call like the primal feminine essence, but it's like it's your full soul's expression shining through this physical expression of you. Like that's to me what it is. It's like channeling that divine all of your, and that's why I created, like when I created the full spectrum femme as part of my business, it was like it's your full spectrum, but it looks different for everyone. Like for me, it's the dancing, it's the singing, it's the music, it's the like the movement, plus I can be amazing in business, plus I'm a wonderful friend, and like there's so many aspects to me. I like being barefoot by the waterfall. I also like the luxurious bougie existence, like all of the things that I am. It's giving myself full permission to be all of that and own all of that, and then like bring it down through my body into the earth and live in reverence to that. And I like that's what it is for me. So um I know there are different definitions around that, but that's what we do with the women in my world, and that's really the only life that I'm available for, and that's what I want in partnership too. Like I want it to be something that illuminates. the fullness of our
Yes.
being together not diminishes us or puts us into boxes where we have to only express certain aspects of ourselves.
Yes. And I want to, in support of what you're saying, I want to point out the difference of our conditioned state based on our trauma and also our original state, right? And that's what I was talking about in terms of that unique essence in expression. So there's our programmed expression and there's our most natural state. And our most natural state is going to have that range. Yeah, actually. So in Tigress, for years, we've been saying for like 20 years in the Tigress community, a simplistic way of describing, much like what you said with full spectrum feminine, um, we are soft and fierce. It's part of what the symbol of tigress stands for. We are the nurturing mother. We are the sensual embodied seductress. We are both. And to unite the Madonna and whore is a very core heart, like in the heart of the work that I do. That's what it's all about. And so this revival of traditional relationship roles, it's like, great, but how about we don't sever the Madonna and whore even more? How about we don't cut off the woman's claws entirely, understanding that that means her instincts, that means her primal connection to reality, to nature, to her own body. We don't want to manicure that all the way down and put her in the frilly, you know, um, floral dresses like I'm seeing some women start wearing, and like they're going to the opposite extreme basically of an over
Yeah.
masculinized state
Yeah.
to let me desire now to be so unconsciously in my feminine. It's like, oh my God, you don't
Yeah.
have to choose. You don't have to choose.
This is actually such a good point, and I also want to really honor your work because you've been an inspiration for me in this whole thing of like owning that full spectrum. Like over the years, I really feel like you've been a permission slip for me to understand that I get to be all of that, and that is part of my makeup, and unravel some of that patriarchal conditioning around this. But like, I say this a lot to women when I notice because I talk about like, if we talk about it from a business money perspective, which is part of the work that I do with women, it's like when we come from that hyper masculine, over masculine drive and an unhealthy masculine, and that is a reflection of our relationship to the masculine. It's like women will then ping pong into what I call the swampy femme. So it's like they go, F all the masculine stuff, I'm not being that anymore. And then they like kind of collapse. And then they're like feeling vulnerable and not driven and unmotivated. And they're like, all over the place with their business and they don't want to commit to anything and they don't want to be in leadership and they're in avoidance actually of a lot of the old way. And it's like in the middle, that's again about the spectrum, in the middle of these two ends of the spectrum, and if we look at like there's the unhealthy expressions and then the healthy expressions resides like an integrated being, a full being, and that will look different for us because some women will have a bit more of a masculine core and some will be actually more feminine inclined, but it comes from your truth and your wholeness and regulation and integration, not from avoidance of the thing that you are rejecting about your previous self, previous life, or your relationship to it in the past. And so I think that's a really important thing to know.
Totally, totally. The women that have trained with me, we're sharing in the world a very detailed look at that full spectrum psyche of all the places that the female nervous system can go to, right? So from every single fight, flight response, like what does that look like on this mythosomatic map of the real deep inner feminine psyche? Because no, we don't want to live in our conditioning. We don't want to live in our reaction to it either. And there's the full allowing of both, right? So the Eve and the Lilith, and we are all that. All of us are that, but some lean one to one more, a little bit more than the other, and that's what makes us all unique. And we need that diversity. We don't need everyone trying to emulate this stereotypical version that cuts off your naturalness, and I want to say that that inner animus, I don't even want to say it as masculine because I think it's so in the current collective psyche of something not to be. So it's like that inner animus is autonomy itself. It is the part of us that can feel our own desire instead of just being at response to someone else's desire, which women in that patriarchal programming. And so it's not even like I want to do things that men do, or, it's not like that. It's just a fire inside, right? Rather than being all water only,
Yeah,
and anyway,
yeah.
this is health. This is just healthy.
Yeah, I have this concept that's how I describe this in my business. I call it femme fire or femme flow, which is my expression of like masculine, feminine. Are you in the fire? Are you in the femme flow? Rather than let's talk about like masculine, feminine, let's talk about it from that perspective. Um, so I love that. And I think like part of the journey for me in all of this has been looking at because I love men and I know many amazing men that I really respect. And my relationship to the masculine has changed a lot since I've done my own healing of my own self. In saying that, what I have then looked at on the spectrum of things is where I've been in fawning responses. So it's like where I've stepped over really poor behavior, or I've like allowed things that I shouldn't have allowed from men or the masculine, or like put them on a pedestal or listen to certain teachings because although I had done a lot of healing work, I was still then in, that fawning response of looking for male approval or looking for, to be the kind of woman that a man would choose. And the reclamation for me has been stepping out of that into who am I that I choose me? Like me becoming a woman where I fully choose myself and I feel like I'm the fullest, most authentic expression of myself. That's like the person that I want to be in order to be in leadership in business, but then in partnership as well. So that's been like a really big part of my journey as well.
Yes. And to even discover that, Katie, don't you see as well how in order to come to that place, it has to be through embodiment. It's got to be through sensuality, sexuality, our actual physicalized embodiment connection to ourselves to take us closer to actual reality with a capital R, to take us out of living in this conceptual place and wanting to fit in and wanting to be chosen. It's like, how do you so authentically come to that place where you actually have the certainty and the inner strength and the freedom inside to carve out, actually, no, this is what's right for me. This is what's natural and in alignment for me. And
Yeah,
knowing that you will find resonance to that, you will find potential partners for that.
100%. And like to me, that just feels like liberation. Like that's how I want to live.
Katie, can we actually go into, if you're willing, a bit of what does it feel like? What does intimacy and sexuality feel like when you feel as free and autonomous as you do, right? Because if women are attempting to fit into, like you were saying, a previous version of yourself was almost going there, yourself, and you're a woman who's always been so on it about your financial autonomy. So if you have felt that, I mean, imagine how many women out there are thinking that, oh, maybe I'm really not attractive as a woman, right? So what is it like in your experience on a woman embodied sensual sexual level in partnership when you really do have freedom of choice? You're not contracting, you're not pushing down your authenticity.
I think it's like, are you talking about like more in the actual sexual expression of yourself, like in partnership with, in relationship with some? Yeah, to me, it's like, it all goes hand in hand because the more authentically expressed you are, the more embodied you are, the more open you are, the more receptive you are. So it's just like you're so, in my experience, it becomes, we move away from that performative kind of thing where we're not like, firstly being honest with our partners about like our desires or our, our wants, needs, what's great, what's not. Like, but from a, a beautifully communicated place, but our body communicates for us. And to me, it's like, this is what I love most about this is that I feel like, honestly, when you're really anchored in your body and your sensuality, it speaks for you and it creates like a vortex where your needs and desires all get taken care of and met because it's just so obvious. Like it's expressed organically and naturally through you. But for me, it's like the more authentically connected I am to myself, my pleasure, my eros, my enjoyment, all of my tone on all the things, all of that naturally emanates into the person that I'm connecting with. And also, um, makes me a match for someone who can meet me in that way, who desires to meet me in that way. And like that is, it's authentic and amazing and delicious and has a level of depth that I think otherwise is very hard to obtain.
Yes, yes. And while you were sharing that, I was tracking how to be in that inner feminine leadership in partnership and intimacy, because you're so activated, because you're so embodied, your body really is a portal. And so who you're relating with, he's going to feel that he's going to have to expand and calibrate to that. And there can be a real fear unconsciously or otherwise in men around facing that level of power, because it means cultivating their own inner feminine to the extent that they are receptive to actually expand with you, rather than have you like be in this static mode where, no, I'm in the leadership. And it's like, yes, be in your leadership. And there's also natural embodied feminine leadership in the woman. And it's a dance. And that's to me the real freaking thing of actual intimacy. That's the frequency of, we're all very human, right? But of God, goddess co-creation together, not this sense of masculine dominance and leadership with the woman down and under him. It's like, that's a completely patriarchal setup. That's an unwillingness to flow with the co-creation of life itself.
There's like a time I really did think that's what I wanted, honestly, which is like so crazy to me to consider. It's like that's not how it works. Like I feel like I'm the oracle. Like, so how could that not be? And that's not like, let me whisper in your ear what needs to happen and you go and execute the thing. It's like there are so many ways in which I'm leading our co-creation through my oracular feminine nature, but it is a dance. And I think that's so beautiful. Like I I think a man, I believe that a woman that's really in her truly embodied power and light is triggering AF for a lot of men, because I do believe it brings up fear because there's nowhere to hide, firstly. Like there's just nowhere to hide. Like, but also um knowing how to hold that is probably so discombobulating for a lot of men. And I think that's why it requires a similar level of all of the things, emotional intelligence, depth, maturity. Like those things actually matter in order for something like this to work and for that yin yang flow to actually be able to move organically between
Yeah,
between both people. Yeah.
totally. Because in order for a man to thrive in that scenario, which you've beautifully described as well, he has to be interested in his own full expression and potential of his masculine range. Because if he's rigidly holding on to the stoic, I have to be in charge and in control, and this is the only mode that I'm willing to go into, he's not only limiting himself, he's oppressing the growth and the expression and the full spectrum, presence and embodiment of the woman.
It's something that I've realized is like so important for me is a man that can be with his own range, is in his own way, which doesn't look like me. And I'm very aware of that. And I'm very supportive of that. But like a man that's really shut off from his emotions and his range and his depth and is just like in that space of like that they can't appreciate the gift that you've got to give them, unfortunately, because we do come with range. And so that feels like oppression and diminishment to me, which I've had the
Yes.
lived experience of now to be able to say, I now know something I didn't know before at this level of embodiment that I'm in. This is what I need. And that's why I say relationships for me is such a fertile training ground, because it's like I'm like, it's such a powerful place of self-reflection because, whoa, look how much I've evolved that I've now realized like the standard of what I need is so much higher in terms of the emotional capacity of this container, or else I don't fit within it. Like a man with a limited capacity like that, containment, if you want to call it like that, to me then feels like a prison, like a box that I've got to conform myself to fit in for their comfort. And it's like, no, I want to be with someone where that full range can be met in its own way, so I can be in my full expression. And that, like, again, it's just to me, I'm like, wow, that is the only way to live. I can't be my full feminine self if that's not available to me.
Yeah, it's like, are you offering containment or a cage? Is it
This is
control?
like, and it comes from, like, for me, a man that can't offer containment and offers a cage is because they're so afraid of their own emotions. They're so afraid of their own vulnerability. They're so afraid of themselves that they'll try and cage you too. And it's like, that's not healthy masculine leadership at all. That's not healthy masculine containment at all. And it is minimizing and diminishing to a woman that wants to be her fully expressed self. Yeah.
I'm personally here for the substance of this work and the research project, not for the likes. But if you want to see interesting and prominent speakers become part of this research, there are two things that you could do right now to help make that happen. First one is to follow the Tigress Path on Instagram or Spotify, and to leave a 5-star rating with a review if you can on Apple. These two things genuinely help so much to get this podcast and research on the radar of those who can help expand the conversation wider. And may we all be free from suffering. Yeah. And that's exactly how I see where patriarchy has got men by the balls in this very intimate life sense, because it's so restricting for him to develop his full masculine range potential. And as a consequence, possibly without even meaning to, it's oppressing the woman because he's oppressing his own inner feminine. And no, we don't want men to be feminine. So let's say, like, you and I are both comfortable in our yang feminine. We're developed in that. But my impression of you, and most definitely me, I'm very receptive with men. I love strong masculine energy. Like, I'm not saying I need to be with some soft guy. Like, I want him to have that capacity, but I
Yeah.
love strong masculine energy. How about you?
I love masculine men. I love masculine men. I love strong masculine men. I don't want that to be confused. And what I want to say about it is, I was talking to actually a group of men's coaches, and they were like, "What do women want?" I'm like, "A warrior with a heart." If I could simplify it, a warrior with a heart. Like, I want a strong man that can take care of me, but that man needs to be integrated in his heart, and I need to be able to feel his heart, and that's the difference. And that requires a man to actually be in touch with some level of his emotional range and expression, but his own heart's frequency. And you can't when you're completely shut off from it. So it's like, yes, I love strong men, but to me also, because this is a hot topic of conversation at the moment, I've noticed vulnerability is weakness in men, and there's men that are a massive stand for vulnerability as true strength and power. And when I see those men speak, I feel their power, and I'm like, that's fucking real masculine energy. Like, I feel it penetrates my being. Men that are like, that's a weakness and that's not our thing. Whilst I see the validity in, like, where they're coming from on some level, I'm like, the energy is different. And it's like, I don't trust you. I don't trust that. And it feels like oppression, actually, probably because that's an internalized sense of oppression. So, to me, men that can actually meet themselves there and meet their woman there, that is actually true masculinity.
Totally. Yeah. When a strong masculine man, like, that's typically a lot of the time he's in that energy, not all the time because he's integrated, right? That's what we're talking about here. But when that strong masculine man is being vulnerable, it makes me melt in a way that nothing else does or can. Like, it is sublime. It's sublime to be on the receiving end of that.
I feel the same way. And, like, I have had experiences with very strong men where they've shown me that side of them. And it is the number one thing that I remember about my experience with them. And just like, whoa, I feel so connected to you. I feel so safe with you. I feel like I could totally open to you. I can open and, like, give you all of myself because I trust you to hold it and handle it. And the thing is, it's been interesting because when I've had experiences like that with men, that actually then it's like that triggered their fear of their own vulnerability. They then closed down, I'm like, that was the thing. That was the magic. And so it's like, that is my desire in my partner, is that they actually have the capacity to go to that place, meet themselves there, meet me there, and then live from that, not run away from that. But I think the thing is, like, my understanding of this is that many men probably feel like that vulnerability, and this is just my understanding from the men I've spoken to, has been weaponized against them in the past by partners. And it's like, so there's that part of the conversation too. Whilst I understand that, I'm like, we've all been very deeply hurt, right? It requires massive courage to do the work, to then open in vulnerability to partnership. And I've
Yeah.
said we've got to find someone that's a match for the level that we're at for it to work.
Yeah. Yeah. And the way that I see it, it's not, it's being said as that sometimes that women are like the primary reason why men have, estranged themselves from their own vulnerability. But I actually don't think that's true in the relationship sense. I think it's the child rearing from the beginning and
Yeah.
real boys don't cry and all of that. That's the primary imprint, and then from trauma interacting with each other, it goes there with the women. But especially if a man wants to be a father, I mean, for his own health, for the well-being of the relationship, that's a good enough reason. But if he wants to be a father, to model that evolutionary step for humanity, like you can be genuinely vulnerable without letting go of your
Yeah.
masculinity, like that is the modeling. That is the primary new imprint to be passing
And
on,
it's another
right?
thing, again, that's something I've acknowledged in my journey of relating to this point. I'm like, that is a requirement for me and the man I'm going to have a child with, period. That's so, so important in order to break that cycle, because that's why I started my healing journey. When I got married, I was like, whatever's going on here, I'm not passing that on to a child. And I like, that's 10 years ago. 10 years I've been so deep in this work, like a full-time job, because I wanted to break that cycle. And so for me, if I am going to go into motherhood, it's got to be with someone that's willing to meet me in that place, because interrupting that cycle and that pattern is like the most important thing to me when it comes to that role.
Yeah, yeah. And I know that women that are doing very well on an autonomy level with their finances and their business, they look at it a little differently sometimes, like what they don't expect absolutely everything to be provided for them financially necessarily, which is a strong message that maybe is putting too much pressure on at least some guys, and makes them give up on even trying. But I know plenty of women that are doing it in their relationship dynamic of like, he takes care of the survival needs because that does take her out of her survival nervous system and then does help her rest in her feminine. But it's not like he's expected necessarily to be 100% taking care of everything, right? How do you feel about that?
I think it's such an interesting, like, there's so many ways that this can work, because masculine provision comes in many forms. But I have this thing in my world where I talk about like the material meets the spiritual, like priestess empress kind of thing. Like we want both, right? Like we want to be in both of those planes. And I think with men, what I've realized is like a man that actually has some level of mastery over the material realm is to me very important, because it's like they have to, like, if they can't provide for my basic needs, I'm not going to feel safe and okay with them. I can do that for myself. It's not about like the level of, like, there's a lot of women. I've got a theory that women find it easier to make money than men, honestly, because we're just magnetic and we're like a portal to the divine and it just flows through, which is why so many women have like blown up the online space. A lot of women can provide themselves a very extravagant lifestyle compared to like generations before us, right? Wealthy women, do we expect that a man's going to be able to provide all of that and more, and also be all the things we want, like this healed, integrated version of him? Like, it's possible, but also, is that what's most important? So I think, like, I call it provider money versus magic money. It's like if a woman's got her provisionary needs met, like you spoke about, so much better capable of like bringing in the magic money, in my opinion, because it's not coming from that state of survival or need. So if that's the model that works for people, then yes, like I think that's perfect. But I'm definitely not a like 50-50 kind of gal. I'm like, I want to be provided for. Thank you. And I also bring a lot to the table in many different ways as well.
Which is why it's never 50-50. Like it doesn't feel like equal when a woman is paying half the finances because there's so much invisible substance that we bring that is not accounted for. So I grew up understanding 50-50 to mean that's how I maintain my independence, that's how I maintain my sovereignty. And I have learnt the error of my ways and my conditioning in that I would never do that to myself. And I would never do that to a man again, quite frankly, because it is not healthy for them either. Even though I think it's probably the norm in Australia at this point for there to be an expectation. If we look at the wider culture, that 50-50 is probably the way to go. But those of us that have gone deep into our nervous system healing, through our trauma healing, and deep into our embodiment, understand that if we're to prioritize our feminine health and that sustainability on that embodiment level, that no longer works, that 50-50 model.
Exactly. I agree.
Yeah. Yeah. Whatever configuration of relationship we're in, traditional relationship roles or, really successful woman who's, made her own choices in her relationship of how the finances work. It's like whatever choice, there has to be this awareness of having an anchor financially for that freedom, for that autonomy, for that choice, right? Because we never know what's going to happen in life on a health level. We never know what's going to happen on a relationship level. And if we leave ourselves unprotected and wide open on that level, I know this is something that you're passionate about. So I wanted to make sure we get this in before we wind up about um, how it's not feminine to have that awareness for ourselves, right? To have our own, at the very least, nest egg to be able to fall back on, right? And to understand that, I mean, in other cultures and in times past, that would be provided by the family lineage and just that would be hers, that would be her inheritance. But a lot of us aren't, unfortunately, in that ancestral experience to have it like that. So we do need to find a way to generate it, right?
Yeah, I believe so. I mean, that's why I work with women to really step into their soul purpose and their gifts and their magic and create a business around that because I do believe that we should have that. And I don't know what the solution is for someone that doesn't have that and is in that kind of situation that they can't get out of. But for me, it's like I honestly believe, like I said before, the divine gave me these gifts so I could be fruitfully abundant in every way. And that's a byproduct of like who I am more than what I do. I feel like I get paid for being me. And I feel like all the investment into my healing and my growth and my personal development and being the best version of me is keeps coming back to me. And it's like just sharing my soul's gift, like in my own way. So I am big on that because I think that we should have options and we should have freedom. And also, like, I look at it through the masculine perspective. It's like, do men really want to be with a woman who's only with them because she's trapped financially in that relationship and can't get out? Like, I
Please.
mean, does that make you feel good? Like, I would imagine the answer is no. So it's like, I feel like this is how we know we're in authentic relationship where we're both choosing each other and choosing this life together because it amplifies us, not because we can't get out.
Yeah, I mean, that just strikes me as so much insecurity to need things to be like that on the behalf of the man for him to feel secure and confident and powerful through control. It's like, hello, patriarchy, you know? So to be able to, yeah, know that we can be free in whatever. expression is our natural place, whatever configuration of relationship, children, not children, that women want to have. Um, that it's definitely in favor of our feminine health and our feminine energetics and our embodiment to take care of ourselves.
Yeah.
Um,
And have overflow. Like if your man's going to take care of everything, then your money, if that's overflow money for you, great. Like that's even better. It's like that's going to nourish and uplift you in every way. But there's never been a better time for women to do this because we're in the digital age now. So you can make money anywhere, anytime, like from your home. It's never been easier for women to actually be able to do that, which makes me really happy. Like I was saying about overflow and like, if the man wants to provide everything and the woman's got her own money, then it can be like overflow on all the luscious feminine things that she wants to do and enjoy and have for herself without the pressure also of that all being on him, which I think could work very well for people. But, what I was saying is like, we're in the digital age now, so there's never been a better time for women to actually do this because there's so much opportunity for us to work from anywhere, for us to make it work on our terms. There is like endless opportunity for online business and online money. And so I think it's just like it makes sense that we're stepping into that era, at this time.
completely. Yes, completely. And with that online world opportunity, exactly like you're saying, I've seen so many women in the last 15 years, especially, basically become millionaires from scratch, from nothing, after becoming mothers, after withdrawing from the external workplace, creating their own reality, creating their own ecosystem that actually supports them in their feminine energy. And because they have to focus and they're already reprioritized because of becoming a mother, they just become so strategic and so on purpose. And like that's a beautiful possibility for women as well. Or it doesn't have to be seven figures, right? But just something that you love and that sustains you. Because being in our feminine is not just being in service to a man and children. It is, like I'm someone that if I had children, I would want to be with them. I would want to be with them all the time when they're young. Like that's me. And that's a choice that I encourage in women that want that. But at the same time, I also know about myself that I'm not going to, my purpose on a transpersonal level is not going to disappear just if I had kids. I don't want kids at this point now, but for women like you and others that want that, you don't have to choose one or the other. You get to do it in a way that you create yourself. And I know, Katie, that's your area of mastery. So, what have you got going on at the moment that women can jump into, and how can they find you and connect with you?
Yeah, thank you for asking. So I'm on Facebook, Instagram, and all the usuals, which I'm assuming we can put in the show notes. I also have a podcast called The Priestess Path, which a lot of that I talk about feminine money and feminine business and embodiment as well. But I have a couple of different signature offerings, and of course, there's like other ways people can work with me one-to-one, but Inspiratrix is actually like a business mastermind meets feminine mystery school where we do the inner work. We do a lot around identity and around our relationship with money and receiving. But also, I have a space where I help women scale a soul business or really step into their soul purpose and then know how to grow that. And it's got a combination of strategy as well as the inner work because, in my opinion, like they go hand in hand and we need both. So that's a space for anyone that's like looking to create that or grow what they've already got going. And the majority of women that come in there is a range. Some of them are product-based businesses, but a lot of them are like healers of some kind, medicine women, coaches themselves. So there's that space. And then my program, The Embodied Empress, which I'm launching right now, is actually for women that have scaled their business, they've created that wealth, and they actually want to now bring more of the feminine energy into what they're doing because they've probably found themselves locked in quite an unhealthy masculine way of doing it and might feel like they need more ease and more magnetism and perhaps like they want the relationship out the side of their business or things outside of their business aren't working. And so that's really about looking after the woman behind the business so that the business can continue to be a pathway for more wealth and more success as well.
Yeah, amazing, Katie. You're definitely doing what you're meant to be doing in the world. And I see
Thank
women
you.
thriving that are connecting with you. So I'm so happy that you've given yourself permission to be all the woman that you are. I'm
Thank
so
you.
thankful that you could join me today in the conversation. And I want to invite everyone who's listened to also be part of this conversation with us. And a way that you can do that is to share what's coming up for you, what questions you have, what, resonance you have, and share it in the review of this episode. I'm sure Katie and I would both love to see that.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you.
If you enjoyed listening to this episode, please do share it around on social media. And know that everyone is invited to be part of our research in the anonymous survey. Your contribution will help reveal the exact ways men and women can live beyond patriarchal sex and find greater harmony together. You can find the link to our survey and also details on the Tigress Path for Women via thetigresspath.com.